You back into the space of the room. Thank you, Joey. I think we could all go home now. How many have never heard me speak before? Can you raise your hands? So it's important, I think, for you to know that this particular ministerial robe was a gift from this community for my ordination. So I'm an ordained minister of the Science of Mind known as the Centers for Spiritual Living, serving as staff minister here for many, many years, community outreach. So whenever I am speaking, unless there's some reason not to, I always wear this robe. So wherever I go, part of you, in consciousness, but in the physical realm, goes with me as well. Loose the Consciousness from Living the Science of Mind textbook by Ernest Holmes. I guess it's not technically the textbook, it is a book about the textbook, the Science of Mind textbook. So think about loose the consciousness. What could that possibly mean? So, are we on? Are we okay? Yeah. So if I take something and I loose it, what happens? What used to be bound is now released. As I was sharing with the 9 o'clock service, 3/4 of the way through that book, this chapter appears, which is one page. But he felt it was so important to remind us that we tend to get forgetful, distracted, busy, and so we live in this state of limited consciousness. Like our congregational song at the very beginning reminded us, we are actually limitless beings. Most of us go, well, that may be true to the person to my left, the person to my right, or in front of me, behind me, but it applies to us all. If you are sacred human, it applies to you, to me. So our task daily is to continue. Now I know where they get Star Wars. To remind ourselves that I am limitless and enter into our spiritual practices so that we not only get it with those little brain cells, but that we translate it into the 53 trillion cells that make up this body and being each of us has. So this is time for us, as we contemplate this, to check in with ourselves and say, where am I in this practice? Or where am I in my journey? Because we are all on the sacred path, right? Spiritual journey. Spiritual beings having a physical experience. And so it's important for us to daily remember that. In the writings that Loose the Consciousness, it says a certain time should be taken each day for the enlargement of consciousness. So if I'm going to enlarge this muscle, what must I do? I have to work that muscle, right? Which most of us need to be reminded of on a daily basis also. The dilemma of humanity. Nothing is too good to be true. Nothing is too good to be true. Does it say some things are too good to be true? It says what? Nothing. Nothing. No thing is too good to be true. So how do I live that? Do I really believe that? Because it's really important if we're going to embrace this tradition and the science of mind and what Ernest Holmes was talking about and pointing to. I really have the opportunity to create change for who? Yes. All, everything, self. And where does that begin? With number one. I don't know about you. Have you ever tried to change somebody else? And how successful were you? Just doesn't work, huh? In fact, most of us find it very challenging simply to try to change ourselves. So that's our challenge. So I want you to think about the quote, the reading that Diana did. We should expand our thought until it realizes all good. Till it realizes all good. So if we look around the world today, in our own lives, first of all, where is there lacking good? Where is it we are lacking good in our own life? So let's make a list, top 3. Where am I lacking good? Think of what number 1 might be. In other words, a growing item. Maybe it is exercise. Maybe it's resolving conflict with family or friend. Maybe it's shifting a disease, an illness that I have. As we age, we typically encounter what? What was that? Pain. Right here on the front row. The insight has come. Well, as I mentioned in the first service, and I usually do every time I speak, none of us get out of this alive. However, what we want to be mindful of is the quality of life while we are here. Because our consciousness is a factor in what that journey is like. So I talked about in the first 9 o'clock service, our community has gone through the car fire, and it has radically changed us. And we are in a grieving process and a healing process. And it's important for us to do our grief work, because our grief work is part of our healing process. And so that means we have to feel the pain. When you personally think of the car fire, what comes up for you? What words? Empathy, fear. What was that? I couldn't hear you. Sadness. Lots of loss. What was that? Desperation? Devastation. Have you gone for a drive out to Whiskey Town? 1,000 homes, 38,000 people evacuated, significant impact. And like I mentioned before, the smoke even went as far as Europe. Has had a global, international impact. So one of the things I'd like you to think about is when we respond to circumstances, we know ourselves. I am the author of what? My own experience. So does that mean, I have to remember to stay here, does that mean I created the car fire? What it means is what I'm responsible for is my response. I'm the author of my response to whatever I encounter in this lifetime. That's why prayer and our spiritual practices are so, so important. So if you imagine all the people in this room, we all have consciousness, right? So really, there's a lot more in membership than are in this room at this particular center. But we come together in consciousness here at this center, And we create the experience that is unfolding here. Our prosperity, our creative expression, our relationship to each other, and our health, the 4 quadrants of what we work with. Well, let's think about this beyond this center. If we're part of the 92,000 people of Redding, 180,000 of Shasta County, 325 million in the US, and billions around the world, we are all part of that. So we think about the ailments in our culture today that require healing. Do you ever feel overwhelmed? Like it's a daunting, impossible task? So I want us to think about this for a minute. Let's look at our political climate in this country. Let's just pick the US. It's a challenging scenario, isn't it? No matter what your perspective is. And what do we notice about, if we consider just our presidential election in 2016, how many people did not participate? Do you know? 42% of the population. 42% of the population did not participate. So if I see, say I'm driving down the street and I see someone fall down, I have some options, don't I? I can just keep driving, or I can pull over and help that one get up. If need be, I may call an ambulance. So in this case, the example of the political climate, 42%, you might say, just kept driving, did not participate in what was transpiring. We could make the transpiring also a positive thing. They're raising a banner downtown and have a community gathering that's about the health and wellness of helping perhaps the homeless. That's a positive thing, but I can also keep driving on by, can't I? So what do I do with this limitlessness that I am? Do I just drive on by? Or do I use that connection to love, to the presence of God, the presence of Spirit, to help me engage, to be part of the solution? Let's think about economics in the United States. 1 in 8 people are hungry. 1 in 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. First row, second row. Look at that, just here in this room, if we did 1 in 8. And we're one of the wealthiest nations in the world. Staggering, isn't it? Also, if we look at environmental issues, climate change has been an issue for decades, but we've really only been openly talking about it for a brief series of years, right? Some of us have been very well attuned, but really thanks to Al Gore, he brought it to our attention. And so we can think, what are they doing? But it really comes down to, what am I doing? What's my carbon footprint? Am I recycling? Am I avoiding the use of plastics? What am I doing? Because I can be part of the solution. Sociological. 2006, I invited here to this room Lieutenant Dave Grossman. He's one of the experts on mass killings. He works with the FBI, West Point, KGB. He works around the world. And he said here in this very room that there would be more killings in public places because those youth growing up that were involved in school shootings would become adults. When you think of our children, killing our children, that's hard to even put your mind around. There is a great deal of anger in our nation. There is a call for us to be active healers. When we look at the writings of Ernest Holmes, he pointed us to, and I quote, unconditional faith in and reliance upon this inner presence. So it is true, that's why we're here, learning about how to do spiritual mind treatment, how to affect change within us so that we can emanate to the world and create healing. But sometimes we battle things like, what? Despair? What else? What are challenges for you? Roadblocks, obstacles. You have any? Money? So Ernest Holmes said we can change our consciousness towards that. Because I don't know about you, but the most important thing in working with people is not about giving them money. It's about listening, about hearing them, what they feel, what they experience. What are the other challenges you face besides money? Health. Absolutely. All of us deal with that at some level, don't we? So if I'm... What was that? Unconscious patterns. And that's exactly what Ernest Holmes was pointing to. When we see our behaviors, those are outpicturing of our consciousness that's in conflict with the teaching, what we know to be true. We have to shift that. We have to go to prayer. We have to go to our spiritual mind practices. And when we see the pattern that we've been doing, we have to stop that pattern and say, no, this is the change I'm bringing. Because if I can work with me and create that, I'm going to change my world. Do you ever feel this way? That people are often unreasonable, irrational, sometimes self-centered? You ever been accused of being selfish or having ulterior motives? You ever have friends that you wondered about their trustworthiness? You ever been deceived? You ever find yourself creating something and then people destroy it? You ever have someone be jealous? You ever do good and it seems like nobody notices? In Mother Teresa's room in Calcutta, India, who served the poorest of poor, this was written and hung in her room. It says, people are often unreasonable, irrational, and self-centered. Forgive them anyway. If you are kind, people may accuse you of selfish, ulterior motives. Be kind anyway. If you are successful, you will win some unfaithful friends and some genuine enemies. Succeed anyway. If you are honest and sincere, people may deceive you. Be honest and sincere anyway. What you spend years creating, others could destroy overnight. Create anyway. If you find sincerity and happiness, some will be jealous. Be happy anyway. For the good you do today will often be forgotten. Do good anyway. Give the best you have, and it will never be enough. Give your best anyway. In the final analysis, it is between you and God. It was never between you and them anyway. So, hopefully you hear that as a word of encouragement. You know, she helped millions around the world, not just in Calcutta, India, but around the world. First, it began with her and stepped out to fill a need, to serve, a gifted healer. So, the prayer we're going to embark upon and share in today is about healing our world. And I want us to reflect upon the words of, you might say, this prayer, this song, and to think of ourselves as agents of change and healers to the world, that we take this knowing that we have and we take it to economic, political, social, environmental problems, into our homes, into the byways. So I'm going to invite you, if you're comfortable, to close your eyes and listen to the words. It's called Heal the World. There's a place in your heart, and I know that it is love. And this place could be much brighter than tomorrow. And if you really try, you'll find there's no need to cry. In this place, you'll feel there's no hurt or sorrow. There are ways to get there. We call them spiritual practice. If you care enough for the living, make a little space, make a better place. Heal the world, make it a better place for you and for me and the entire human race. There are people dying, and if you care enough for the living, make it a better place for you and for me. If you want to know why, there's love that cannot lie. Love is strong. It only cares of joyful giving. If we try, we shall see in this bliss we cannot feel fear of dread. We stop existing and start living. Then it feels that always love's enough for us growing. So make a better world, make a better place. Healing the world, make it a better place for you and for me and the entire human race. There are people dying. If you care enough for the living, make a better place for you and for me. And the dream we are conceived in will reveal a joyful face, and the world we once believed in will shine again in grace. Then why do we keep strangling life, wound this earth, crucify its soul? Though it's plain to see this world is heavenly, be God's glow. We could fly so high, let our spirits never die. In my heart I feel you are all my brothers. Create a world with no fear. Together we cry, happy tears. See the nations turn their swords into plowshares. We could really get there if we cared enough for the living. Make a little space to make a better place. Heal the world. Make it a better place for you and for me and the entire human race. There are people dying. If you care enough for the living, make it a better place for you and for me. There are people dying. If you care enough for the living, carry this with you as you leave today. Make a better place for you and for me, you and for me. This was written in 1991, 27 years ago. So our closing prayer is going to be this song. Do you know who wrote it? But what's unique about this video, here's this visionary, Michael Jackson, 27 years ago, is calling this to our attention. And in that calling, what he's asking us to do is to what? Wake up to our spiritual magnificence and live the truth of who we are and the capacity we have to heal. And we always say phrases like, if you won't do it for anybody else, do it for who? For ourselves and our... They were standing up here getting ready to go out to Sunday school. Oh my God, we have to do it for our children. Our children have a wisdom that is difficult to articulate, but we see it. And so I invite us, as we watch this extraordinary video of Michael Jackson's song, portrayed by our children. They are calling us to a different way of being in our world so that we can resolve homelessness, so that we can resolve murder, that our schools can be safe places, that we can help heal the infirmities that we suffer as a people, especially as a nation. Many of the other nations don't have cancer the way we do. So I'm going to invite Marilyn to bring down the lights. I'm going to encourage you to enjoy this.
could fly so high that our spirits never die. In my heart, I feel you are all my brothers. Create a world with no fear. Together we'll cry happy tears. Watch a nation turn their swords into plowshares. We could really get there if we cared enough for the living. Take a little space to make a better place. Build the world, make it a better place for you and for me. The entire keep on running if we get enough for the living. Make a better place for you and for me. Build the world, make it a better place. Oh, you and for me and the entire human race. If we get enough for the living, make a better place for you and for me.
Don't you love it when she goes like this? So I want you, throughout your next week, I want you to go home and have a new relationship with your washer. We can do this, can't we? Thank you.